That feeling of being just a supporting character in someone else's story? That's exactly how I felt one Friday night 6 months ago. Madison had convinced me to tag along to a rooftop party with our so-called friends. I say friends loosely because, honestly, most of them were just familiar faces, people I recognized but couldn't even name. It was that kind of gathering where everyone is connected in some vague way, but real connections are few and far between. Take Ethan, for instance. He had only been hanging around for about 6 months, yet no one seemed to know where he had come from. One day, he just started showing up, seamlessly inserting himself into conversations like he had always been there. He had this uncanny ability to be right in the middle of everything, cracking jokes that weren't actually funny but still managed to get a reaction. Madison thought he was hilarious. Me? I saw him as someone who constantly needed to be the center of attention. Madison, as always, was in her element that night. She effortlessly floated from one group to another, her laughter ringing out, hair flipping, and that dazzling smile of hers lighting up the room, except when she was with me. Meanwhile, I kept to the sidelines, sipping my whiskey, pretending to enjoy the atmosphere while she soaked up all the attention. Normally, I might have brushed it off as just her being Madison. But then I noticed her phone. It was on the table, vibrating nonstop. Each time she glanced at the screen, a sly smile played on her lips before she flipped it face down. Trying to sound casual, I asked, "Who's texting you so much?" "Work," she responded without even sparing me a look. "Work? At this hour?" Finally, she lifted her gaze, already wearing that irritated expression reserved just for me. "Not everyone clocks out at 5, Jordan." I let it go, but my gut told me something was off. And then it happened. The moment that would replay in my head over and over. Madison stood up, raising her glass, and tapped her fork against it. The room hushed, all eyes turning toward her, exactly how she liked it. She flashed a sweet smile in my direction. For a brief second, I thought she might actually say something kind. I should have known better. "To my husband, Jordan," she began. A flicker of hope stirred inside me. Maybe she was about to be affectionate for once. Wrong. "Jordan, the man who is reliable, steady, and always consistent, just like a Honda Civic," she continued, her smile widening. "Not the most thrilling ride, but hey, it'll always get you where you need to go." Laughter rippled through the crowd. He crept up my neck. "And let's not forget his unmatched talent for turning any casual conversation into an in-depth lecture about tax deductions," she added. "Truly a man of many spreadsheet skills." The laughter grew louder. Madison sat back down, looking entirely too pleased with herself. And, of course, Ethan was laughing the hardest, slapping the table like he had just heard the joke of the century. Still chuckling, he leaned toward me and said, "Man, she's got you figured out, huh? Gotta love her sense of humor." I clenched my jaw so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. Leaning toward Madison, I hissed, "What the hell was that?" She barely blinked. Casually swirling her wine, she replied, "It was a joke." "Relax. Publicly humiliating me is a joke to you?" Rolling her eyes, she finally looked at me. "God, Jordan, stop being so sensitive. It's not that deep." Before I could say another word, her phone buzzed again. She picked it up, her fingers flying over the screen, that same smug smile creeping onto her lips. I had enough. Pushing my chair back, I stood. "I need some air," I muttered before heading for the exit. Outside, the rooftop air was crisp and cool, mercifully quiet compared to the noise inside. I leaned against the railing, staring at the city lights, trying to rein in the frustration simmering inside me. Was I overreacting? Maybe. But this wasn't just about tonight. Madison had been acting distant for weeks, the constant buzzing of her phone, the way she lit up around everyone else but barely acknowledged me. And now this public roasting session? My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Madison. "You okay? Don't take it so seriously. You know I love you, right?" I stared at the screen. The words felt empty, like she was saying them out of obligation rather than genuine concern. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't reply. When I stepped back inside, something felt different. Or maybe it was just me. Madison was deep in conversation with Samantha, her best friend and biggest enabler. Samantha kept shooting me these knowing glances, smirking like she was in on a secret I wasn't privy to. Meanwhile, Ethan was still lounging in his chair, scrolling through his phone and laughing to himself every now and then. But every time he looked up at Madison, there was something in his expression, something between amusement and satisfaction. "Jordan, my man," someone called out, waving me over. "Lighten up, grab another drink." I forced a weak smile and made my way to the bar, ordering another whiskey while keeping my eyes on Madison. She was laughing, carefree, tossing her hair as if nothing in the world could bother her. And then I saw it. Samantha slid Madison's phone across the table. Madison picked up her phone, barely glancing at the screen before biting her lip, suppressing a smile. Then, just as before, she flipped it face down on the table. That was the final straw. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. Without hesitation, I returned to the table, leaned in close, and firmly stated, "We're leaving. Now." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise as she met my gaze. "What? Why?" "Because I said so," I responded, my tone sharper than intended. Samantha, never one to miss a chance to stir things up, jumped in. "Oh, come on, Jordan. Let Madison enjoy herself for once. She's been working so hard, she deserves a break." My jaw clenched. I turned my attention back to Madison, locking eyes with her. "If you don't get up right now, I'm leaving without you." With an exaggerated eye roll, she snatched up her bag and tossed her napkin onto the table as if I were inconveniencing her. "Fine. If it's that important to you." The walk to the car felt unbearable. Madison crossed her arms and stared out the window the entire drive home, her silence carrying more weight than any argument ever could. I didn't say a word either. My mind was spinning, and for the first time, I questioned whether I truly wanted to know the truth or if it was already too late. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the atmosphere inside the car had turned suffocating, like a void draining the air around us. She didn't slam the door when she stepped out. No, that would have taken too much effort. Instead, she let out a dramatic sigh, making it clear she saw herself as the wronged party before heading straight inside. I followed, tossing my keys onto the counter as I watched her kick off her heels and grab a water bottle from the fridge. "You want to tell me what that was all about?" I finally broke the silence. She gave me a look as if I had just asked her to solve some impossible equation. What was all about?" I scoffed. "The toast? The phone? Ethan laughing like an idiot all night? Pick one." She rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter. "Oh my God, Jordan. It was a joke. You're being dramatic." My patience was wearing thin. "You called me a Honda Civic, Madison," I reminded her, my voice rising. "In front of everyone." That familiar, smug smile crept onto her lips. "Well, you were reliable." I felt my grip on the counter tighten. "This isn't about the toast, Madison. You've been acting different. Distant. And let's not even start on how your phone has been buzzing nonstop tonight." Her arms crossed over her chest and that smirk disappeared. "I'm sorry if I don't want to spend every minute of my life coddling your ego, Jordan. Maybe you should take a look at yourself for once." That was it. I walked past her and into the bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart pounded in my chest, my head a storm of frustration and suspicion. But then I saw it, her purse casually tossed onto the bed. And peeking out of it like an invitation was her phone. I should have ignored it. I really should have. But my mind was already racing with every little moment that had felt off in the past few months, the late nights, the whispered conversations with Samantha, the constant excuses to meet up with friends. And now Ethan, sitting there with that smug expression like he knew something I didn't. So, yeah. I grabbed the phone. The screen lit up instantly, revealing a new message notification. My stomach dropped. "Ethan, you were on fire tonight. Can't stop thinking about that dress." I didn't hesitate. I unlocked her phone. Madison never used a complicated passcode and opened her messages. There it was. A conversation between her and Ethan stretching back for weeks, maybe even months. I didn't need to scroll far to see enough to make my stomach turn. "Ethan, last night was amazing. I haven't stopped thinking about it." "Madison, me too. Can't wait for the next time." My hands trembled, but I kept scrolling. Each message hit harder than the last. There was no ambiguity here, no way to twist it into something innocent. It was exactly what it looked like. And then it got worse. I scrolled all the way to the first message Ethan had ever sent her. "Ethan, hey, Samantha said I should reach out. She thinks you could use a distraction." Samantha. Of course, she was involved. I set the phone down for a moment, struggling to process what I had just read. My head spun, my thoughts a chaotic mess of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. But I wasn't finished yet. I opened her photo gallery. I know I had already crossed every boundary possible. But something in me needed to see everything, to put together the full picture. Hidden in a private album were pictures, selfies of them together, snapshots from places I didn't even recognize. One photo, taken 2 weeks ago at a small downtown cafe, stood out. That was the same day Madison had told me she was stuck in back-to-back meetings. And then there was the video. I didn't even need to press play. The thumbnail alone was enough. Madison leaning into Ethan, laughing like he had just said the funniest thing in the world. Without a second thought, I quickly copied and transferred it to my phone, just in case. I locked my phone, letting it slip from my grasp onto the bed as I buried my face in my hands. This wasn't just a careless mistake or a passing infidelity, it was deliberate, methodical. It wasn't only about the betrayal, it was about the lengths she had gone to in order to cover her tracks, the way she had twisted everything to make me believe I was the problem while she deceived me behind my back. The quiet was interrupted by the soft creak of the bedroom door. Madison stepped in, her expression shifting instantly from mild annoyance to wary suspicion as she spotted me sitting there. Her gaze darted toward her phone, and in that brief moment I saw the flicker of panic. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. Lifting the phone with trembling hands, I met her eyes. "Want to explain this?" Her features hardened immediately. "Were you going through my things?" she shot back, her voice sharp. I exhaled, rising to my feet. "Are you seriously trying to turn this around on me right now?" My tone was filled with disbelief. "How long, Madison? How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, an infuriating smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Does it even matter?" Something in me fractured at her indifference. "Does it matter?" I repeated, my voice growing louder. "You've been sneaking around with him, that arrogant, self-absorbed jerk, and you have the audacity to act like I'm the one at fault?" Madison took a step closer, her voice turning cold. "Oh, please, Jordan. Maybe if you weren't so painfully boring, I wouldn't have needed someone else to remind me what fun actually feels like." Her words cut deep, but I didn't let her see it. Without thinking, I grabbed her phone and hurled it into the trash can beside the bed. It hit the bottom with a heavy thunk. Madison's eyes widened, her expression twisting from smug amusement to genuine anger for the first time that night. "What is wrong with you, Jordan?" she yelled, rushing to retrieve it. She snatched it from the bin, her fingers running over the newly formed scuffs and dents. "Are you completely out of your mind?" I met her glare with a steady, even voice. "Not out of my mind. Just done. Done with you, with him, with all of it." I motioned toward the trash can. "You threw our marriage away, I figured I'd return the favor." She stared at me, gripping her damaged phone. For a fleeting second I thought she might actually cry, but instead she let out a bitter laugh. "Fine," she snapped, grabbing her bag. "You want me gone? Then I'm gone. And trust me, you'll regret this when you're sitting here alone, bored out of your mind." Without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the windows rattled. And just like that, she was gone. I sat back down on the bed, staring at the trash can where her phone had landed moments ago. My chest felt hollow, as if everything inside me had been carved away, leaving behind nothing but the echo of her final words. I had no idea what was next, but one thing was certain: the life I had believed in was over. The silence that followed was suffocating. The faint scent of her perfume still lingered in the air, a bitter reminder of how effortlessly she had twisted reality, making it seem like I was the problem. I sat on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on my phone, the device now holding all the proof, every screenshot, every message, every piece of undeniable evidence. It felt like living through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, trapped in my thoughts, but at some point the quiet became unbearable. My chest felt tight, my mind racing with questions that had no answers. Why Ethan? Why now? And how had I been so blind? I needed to talk to someone who could help me make sense of this mess. Without hesitation, I called Tyler. Tyler had been my best friend since childhood, the kind of person who kept things real no matter how bad they got. He lived a few states away now, but distance had never been an issue for us. If there was anyone who could cut through the chaos in my head, it was him. The line rang once before he picked up. "Jordan? What's up, man? You sound off." I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Madison's cheating," I said, my voice flat, drained of emotion. A long pause stretched between us before he finally responded. "Are you sure?" "Yeah," I muttered, my hands clenching into fists. "Texts, pictures, the whole thing. And it's with Ethan." "Wait. Ethan?" Tyler's disbelief was obvious. "That loudmouth idiot? Damn. I always knew he was a tool, but this? That's another level." He let out a slow whistle. "Man, I'm really sorry. That's brutal." I told him everything: the dinner, the messages, the undeniable proof. Tyler listened in silence, giving me the space to let it all out. When I finally finished, he exhaled. "Look, I know what you're thinking," he said. "But going after Ethan? That's not the move." "I wasn't going to," I started, but Tyler cut me off. "Don't lie to me, man. I know you too well. You're probably picturing yourself knocking his teeth in right now. But listen, he's not worth it. Don't let some scumbag like him drag you into something you'll regret. Be smart, not angry." He was right. Of course he was. But knowing that didn't make the anger disappear. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tyler's reply was firm. "You do the one thing she never saw coming. Get everything in order. Lawyer up, protect yourself, and let her be the one who loses for a change. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been run over by a truck. Sleep had been a fleeting thing, and when I did manage to drift off, my dreams were filled with haunting images, Madison and Ethan laughing together, mocking me. I forced myself out of bed, moving through the motions of my morning routine without really feeling present. The coffee I brewed was flavorless on my tongue, my mind too preoccupied to register the taste. Settling at the kitchen table, I found myself staring at my phone, debating what to do next. That was when I made the decision I was going to call Samantha. I wasn't entirely sure what I expected from the conversation. Maybe an explanation or perhaps an apology. At the very least, I wanted her to acknowledge what she had done, to admit that she had practically handed Ethan the keys to my marriage, treating it as if it were some kind of twisted game. Samantha picked up on the second ring, her voice carrying its usual upbeat and carefree tone as if nothing had happened. "Jordan, what's up?" she greeted me casually. I didn't bother easing into it. "What were you thinking, Samantha?" There was a brief pause. "Excuse me," she replied, feigning ignorance. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I snapped. "Ethan. You introduced him to Madison. You encouraged this whole thing. Don't play dumb." Samantha let out a long, exaggerated sigh, the kind she always used when she thought someone was being overly emotional. "Look, Jordan, I have no idea what you're accusing me of, but whatever is going on between you and Madison is none of my business." I felt my temper rising. "Not your business? You were the one who told Ethan to reach out." "I saw the messages, Samantha. Don't even try to deny it." She didn't, at least not for long. "All right, fine," she said, her tone suddenly sharp. "Yes, I told him to talk to her. So what? Madison was miserable, Jordan. She needed someone who could make her feel alive again." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. "Alive again?" I repeated, barely believing what I was hearing. "Are you serious? She's married to me. If she was unhappy, she could have come to me. Instead, she sneaks around with Ethan and you just stand on the sidelines cheering her on." Samantha's voice turned patronizing. "You just don't get it, do you? Madison's been unhappy for years. She felt trapped. Honestly, I don't blame her for wanting more than this." I stiffened. "This?" I echoed, taken aback. "What exactly does that mean?" "You're boring, Jordan," she said bluntly, her words slicing through me like a blade. "Predictable. Madison wanted excitement, and you, well, you're just you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So now this is my fault?" I asked incredulously. "She betrays me, and somehow I'm the one to blame?" Samantha's voice turned syrupy, laced with false sympathy. "I'm not saying it's entirely your fault, Jordan. But maybe, just maybe, you should have seen this coming. That was the breaking point. You know what, Samantha? You're just as bad as Ethan. You act like you're above everyone else, but all you do is stir the pot and watch as everything falls apart. If Madison needed help figuring out her feelings, maybe you should have told her to see a therapist instead of throwing her at the first guy who showed interest." Before she could respond, I ended the call. My hands trembled with frustration, but for the first time in days, my mind felt sharp and focused. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a lawyer. I needed to get ahead of this to make sure I was protected and that Madison wouldn't walk away with more than she deserved. The second was to Tyler. "She's not going to see this coming," I told him, pacing my living room. "I have everything, the texts, the photos. The lawyer says it's solid. She's going to lose." Tyler let out a low chuckle. "That's the Jordan I know, calm, calculated. Stay smart about this, man. Don't let her drag you down to her level." I exhaled, a grim smile forming. "Don't worry. I'm just getting started." A few days passed and I started feeling more in control. Olivia, my lawyer, was already drafting the paperwork and I had begun securing everything I could to protect myself financially. I wasn't okay, not really, but I was functioning. Then Madison sent a text. "We need to talk." For words that ignited a fresh wave of anger inside me. No apology. No explanation. Just Madison being Madison, acting as if she was still in control. I didn't reply. That evening, I went home, locked my door, and prepared myself for whatever storm she was about to bring. Sure enough, around 8 o'clock, she showed up. She didn't bother knocking. She just walked in like she still owned the place. I was sitting on the couch, scanning through emails, and didn't bother getting up. "Make yourself at home," I muttered, my voice laced with sarcasm. She ignored my tone, tossing her bag onto the counter. "We need to talk," she said, arms crossed, as if she was the one who had been wronged. "I'm not interested in whatever excuse you've come up with," I replied, my attention still on my screen. She let out a frustrated sigh. "God, you're so dramatic, Jordan," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This isn't about justifying anything. It's about, she hesitated, then exhaled sharply, I don't know, closure. I finally looked at her, disbelief creeping into my expression. Closure? I repeated. You think I'm going to sit here and give you closure after everything you've done? Her jaw tightened. You act like I burned your house down, she said flatly. People cheat, Jordan. It happens. You need to grow up. That was it. I stood, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. You were unbelievable, I said, my voice low and steady. You didn't just cheat, you humiliated me. You lied to my face. And now you stand here acting like it's nothing? Like I should just accept it. Madison's expression remained indifferent, if not slightly irritated. Oh, stop playing the victim, she scoffed. You act like you were the perfect husband. You were boring, Jordan. Predictable. All you ever focused on were responsibilities, work, expenses, and planning for the future. I needed something more. So naturally, you ran to Ethan, I shot back, my voice laced with bitterness. A guy who probably spends more time coming up with clever Instagram captions than making sure his rent is paid? Her lips curled into a smirk, completely unbothered by my words. Ethan made me feel alive, she countered, her tone sharp. Something you haven't done in years. The silence that followed was deafening. Her words lingered in the air, venomous and deliberate. My chest tightened, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. You're disgusting, I said, my voice cold and firm. And for the record, Ethan doesn't make you feel alive. He makes you feel validated. And let's be honest, that's the only thing you've ever cared about. Madison let out a laugh, an actual, amused laugh, and shook her head. Wow. You really do think you're better than everyone, don't you? That holier-than-thou attitude is exactly why I stopped trying with you. Stop trying. I barked, stepping closer, the heat of anger flaring in my chest. Let's not rewrite history, Madison. You never tried. You just kept up an act, pretending to be perfect while blaming everyone else for your miserable existence. A shadow crossed her face, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she shot back with venom. At least I didn't waste my life being average, Jordan. Face it, you're nothing special. Ethan might not be perfect, but at least he's exciting. A bitter laugh escaped me. Yeah, real exciting. Let's see how thrilling he is when he inevitably tosses you aside. You really think you're different? To him, you're just another temporary distraction. And when he moves on, you'll be left with nothing. For the first time, something in her expression cracked, just for a moment. But she recovered quickly, that smirk of hers returning like armor. Still better than being stuck with you. That was the moment I knew there was nothing left to salvage. No conversation, no relationship, nothing. You're pathetic, I said quietly. Get out. She tilted her head as if debating whether to argue, but then grabbed her bag. Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize how much you'll miss me. I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching as she walked out the door, never once looking back. Before you find out what happens next, make sure to subscribe to the channel. The next day, I laid everything out for Olivia, the texts, the pictures, the financial red flags, every single detail. She listened carefully, barely looking up as her pen moved swiftly across her notepad. When I finished, she met my gaze. She's going to fight back, Olivia said, her expression serious. Let her, I replied without hesitation. She doesn't deserve a dime. A knowing smirk spread across Olivia's face. With the evidence you've given me, she won't be getting one, either. That small victory was the first thing that made me feel remotely human in weeks. Later that evening, I received a text from Samantha. You really need to apologize to Madison. She's been through a lot. I stared at the message, barely believing what I was reading. Apologize? To the woman who had cheated on me and then tried to pin the blame on me? I quickly typed back, she's been through a lot. Are you serious? She's the one who destroyed this marriage, Samantha. Stay out of it. Her response came almost immediately. You're being petty, Jordan. If you had been a better husband, none of this would have happened. My grip on my phone tightened as anger bubbled to the surface. How could someone be so blind? Samantha wasn't just defending Madison, she was rewriting history to make her the victim. I didn't hold back in my reply, thanks for the unsolicited advice, Samantha. Maybe you should take a long, hard look at your own life before giving me lessons on mine. I hit send, blocked her number, and tossed my phone onto the couch. I was done being polite. That night, sleep eluded me. The anger, the sheer absurdity of the situation churned in my mind like a relentless storm. But beneath it all was something else, a strange, bitter clarity. Madison and Samantha weren't just toxic. They thrived on it. They lived for chaos, for control, for the twisted pleasure of keeping others on edge. And for years, I had been the perfect target. Not anymore. A few days later, I started hearing from mutual friends. Apparently, the fallout from Madison's confession had spread like wildfire, turning my phone into a nonstop source of buzzing notifications. Missed calls, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months but who were suddenly deeply invested in my personal life. The first call I picked up was from Lauren. She was one of the quieter ones in our group, never particularly outspoken. Honestly, I had never thought she had much of an opinion on anything. Jordan, she began cautiously, her voice careful as if she were afraid I might lash out. I heard what happened. Are you okay? I leaned back in my chair, exhaling. Define okay. There was a long pause before, in a rushed whisper, Lauren said, look, I just wanted you to know, a lot of us, we saw this coming. I sat up straighter. Saw what coming? Madison and Ethan, she admitted, her voice dropping lower. It's been obvious for a while. The way they acted at parties, how they'd slip away to talk in private. Honestly, Jordan, people started assuming you knew and just didn't care. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Why didn't anyone tell me? I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. A heavy silence followed. Lauren hesitated before speaking, then finally admitted it's complicated. She let out a sigh. Samantha controlled the story. She made it seem like you were distant, too focused on work, and that Madison, well, that she deserved someone who actually made her happy. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought my teeth might crack. Samantha. Again. Of course, it was her. Lauren must have sensed my reaction because she quickly added, I'm sorry, as if that would somehow lessen the impact. Thanks for letting me know, I responded, my tone flat. Without giving her a chance to say anything else, I ended the call. Not long after, my phone rang again. This time, it was Ryan, one of Ethan's friends. I hesitated, nearly ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. Dude, Ryan began, his nervous chuckle filling the silence. I had no idea about you and Madison. Ethan's been keeping it pretty low-key. Low-key? I repeated, my voice cold. Is that what you call sneaking around behind my back and making out at parties? Look, man, I'm not saying it was right, Ryan stammered, clearly uncomfortable. But Ethan, he's just that kind of guy, you know? He doesn't think things through. It wasn't personal. Not personal? I snapped, my patience running thin. He was with my wife. How exactly is that not personal? Ryan let out a deep sigh. I get it, man. I really do. But Ethan's never been the type to consider consequences. To him, this was probably just fun. The word echoed in my mind, igniting fresh anger. Fun. That was what this had been to them. I took a deep breath, my voice steady but firm. Let me make one thing very clear, Ryan. If Ethan wants to keep enjoying himself, he'd better stay as far away from me as possible. Because the next time I see him, I won't just be talking. Ryan mumbled something about staying cool before quickly hanging up. I had a feeling he regretted calling me in the first place. By the end of the day, I had pieced together a sickening reality. Nearly everyone in our circle had either known or suspected what Madison was doing. Worse, some of them had encouraged it. And at the center of it all? Samantha. She had twisted the story, making Madison out to be some victim trapped in a loveless marriage, justifying her actions as if she was entitled to a little fun with Ethan. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of Madison, but because of the people I had once considered friends. They weren't friends. They were vultures circling around the wreckage of my marriage, pretending they were doing it for Madison's sake. That evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was Tyler. How's the battle going? He asked, his tone light but layered with genuine concern. About as bad as you'd expect, I admitted. Turns out half the people we thought were friends were in on it. Tyler let out a low whistle. Man, that's rough. Want my advice? Always. Cut them all loose, he said without hesitation. Samantha, Ethan, all of them. They're toxic and you don't need that kind of weight dragging you down. I'm already on it, I replied. Blocked Samantha this morning. Ryan's probably next. Good, Tyler said approvingly. Now focus on what actually matters, your lawyer, your finances, and, most importantly, your peace of mind. The rest is just noise. Tyler always had a way of simplifying things, cutting through the mess to get straight to the point. That night, I sat down with a notebook and started making a list. On one side, I wrote down the names of people I could still trust. On the other, the names of those who had betrayed me. The second list was far longer than the first. But as I stared at it, something shifted inside me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just hurt. I was determined. This wasn't just about Madison or Ethan or even Samantha anymore. This was about reclaiming my life. Cutting out the rot and starting over. A week passed and I could already feel the weight lifting. Cutting off Samantha and the others felt like removing a tumor I hadn't even realized was poisoning me. My lawyer, Olivia, had everything under control, and for the first time in ages, I actually slept through the night without waking up in frustration or regret. Then Madison decided to show up. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was in the middle of reorganizing the garage when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I ignored it. But then it came again, louder this time, impatient. Reluctantly, I opened the door. And there she was. Madison stood before me, looking as if she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her outfit screamed, "I'm doing great without you." "Jordan," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe and folded my arms, waiting. She let out an exaggerated sigh, as if I was the unreasonable one here. "Look, I know things got messy, but we need to figure this out. For both our sakes." "Figure what out?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She stepped closer, tilting her head slightly as if trying to appear sincere. "Come on, Jordan. We were married for years. We can't just throw that away." A laugh burst from me, sharp, bitter, and entirely genuine. "You're kidding, right? You threw it away the moment you decided Ethan was worth more than our vows." For a brief second, her expression wavered, but she quickly regained control. "I made a mistake, okay?" she said, her voice softening. "I let things spiral out of control, but that doesn't erase everything we had." "Madison," I muttered, shaking my head. "What we had was a marriage. But you turned it into a farce, and I refuse to be the punchline any longer." Her eyes narrowed in frustration. "You're being unbelievably stubborn. Do you even care about fixing this?" "Fixing this?" I echoed, disbelief laced in my tone. "Madison, you didn't come here to fix anything. You came because you're losing. You thought Ethan was your golden ticket, but now you're realizing he's just another guy who uses people and moves on. So spare me the fake tears." Her lips parted as if she had something to say, but no words came. For the first time, she had no sharp comeback. I took a step forward, my gaze unwavering. "Am I wrong? Is Ethan still around, or has he already moved on to his next thrill?" The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. Taking a step back, I gestured toward the driveway. "You can leave now, Madison. We're done here." But she didn't move. Instead, her face twisted into something bitter, something uglier than I had ever seen before. "You know what, Jordan? You're pathetic," she spat. "You talk about vows and loyalty, but you never once made me feel alive. You act like some noble victim, but the truth is, you're just boring. Ethan was right. You're the kind of guy women settle for, not the kind they crave." Her words were meant to wound, but they didn't land the way she expected. Instead of anger or pain, all I felt was relief. Because in that moment, I saw her for exactly who she was, and I was grateful I wasn't going to waste another 5 years figuring it out. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face, catching her off guard. "You're right, Madison," I said, my voice calm. "I am boring. I work hard, I pay my bills, and I don't need reckless thrills to feel alive. But you know what else I am? Free. Free from you, your lies, and whatever chaos you'll bring into the life of the next guy who falls for your act." Her jaw clenched, fists curling at her sides. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Doubt it," I replied, shutting the door in her face. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. And for the first time in a long time, it felt good. Better than I expected. Like I had finally taken back something I hadn't even realized I lost. Then my phone buzzed. "Tyler. How's it going?" he asked the moment I picked up. "Madison just showed up," I told him. Tyler groaned. "Let me guess, she gave you the whole 'we can work this out' speech?" "Pretty much," I said, pacing the kitchen. "She's good at pretending. I'll give her that. But when I didn't bite, she showed her true colors. Told me I was boring and pathetic." Tyler let out a short laugh. "Classic projection. You're not boring. She's just terrified of being alone." "Yeah, well, that's not my problem anymore," I said, feeling lighter with every word. "Damn right, it's not," Tyler agreed. "So, what's next?" I thought about it for a moment. Finish the divorce, rebuild my life, and maybe, just maybe, find a better class of friends. Tyler chuckled. "Now that's the spirit. And hey, don't forget to send me an invite when you throw your Madison-free life party." "You'll be the guest of honor," I said with a grin. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I felt free. Madison's words, as cruel as they were, didn't sting the way they once would have. Because I finally understood something. Her opinion no longer mattered. I wasn't the villain in her story, I had just been her excuse. And now I didn't have to play that role anymore. As I sat on the couch, sipping a beer and watching the last light of the sunset fade, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something better. A week had passed since Madison's desperate attempt at redemption, and I was slowly settling into my new reality. The divorce was progressing without a hitch. Olivia made sure of that, and I had finally cleared out the last remnants of Madison's belongings from the house. Life wasn't perfect, but at least it was mine again. Then Ethan decided to make his move. It started with a text. Unknown number. Hey man, can we talk? It's Ethan. Seeing his name on my screen made my stomach twist. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to delete the message and pretend I never saw it. But another part, the one still simmering with unresolved anger, wanted to know what he could possibly have to say. So I replied, "Me, what do you want?" His response was immediate. "Ethan, I think we need to clear the air. Let me swing by." "You home?" I should have said no. I knew I should have. But something in me wanted to look him in the eye, to hear whatever excuse he was about to throw at me. When he showed up, he looked exactly like the arrogant guy I remembered: designer sneakers, some overpriced jacket, and that same smug expression he always carried. "Jordan," he greeted, holding up his hands like he was walking into enemy territory. "Appreciate you letting me talk. I know things have been tense." "Tense?" I repeated, crossing my arms. "You slept with my wife, Ethan." "Tense doesn't even begin to cover it." He winced, like my words had physically hurt him. "Look, man, I get it. I messed up big time. But it's not what you think." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh really?" Ethan scoffed, crossing his arms. "Oh really? Then why don't you go ahead and enlighten me?" Taking a deep breath as if preparing for some grand revelation, Ethan fixed his gaze on me. "Madison came to me," he said, his voice carrying a weight of forced drama. "She told me you were distant, that she felt trapped, like she couldn't breathe in your marriage. I didn't plan for anything to happen. It just did." I responded with a slow, deliberate clap. "Wow. What a touching love story. Let me guess, she painted me as the boring husband and you saw yourself as her knight in shining armor, right?" Shifting uncomfortably, Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't like that. I mean, yeah, she said things about you, but I didn't take it seriously. She just needed someone to listen." I let out a sharp laugh, my words laced with sarcasm. "And you listened, didn't you? Listened all the way into her bed." Ethan held up his hands in a weak attempt to look innocent. "I'm not proud of it, okay? But Madison, she's not who you think she is. She's a manipulator. She twists things, makes you believe you're the problem. She did it to me too." I stared at him, trying to process his audacity. Was he really trying to paint himself as the victim here? "So let me get this straight," I said, stepping in closer. "You expect me to feel sorry for you? Because Madison played you like a fool? Let me give you a reality check, Ethan. You're not the first guy she's tricked, but you are the one stupid enough to think you could get away with it." His smirk wavered and he exhaled heavily. "Look, I'm just trying to be honest. I wanted to apologize, all right? I never meant to hurt you." I met his gaze, my voice turning cold. "You didn't hurt me, Ethan. You humiliated yourself. And for the record, whatever sob story Madison fed you, it doesn't change the fact that you knew she was married. You knew and you still didn't care." Ethan opened his mouth, probably to offer some weak defense, but I didn't give him the chance. Instead, I reached for a basketball sitting on the porch and held it up. "Here's some advice," I said, gripping the ball. "Stop chasing married women and stop acting like some tragic hero who just couldn't help himself." Before I could overthink it, I launched the basketball straight at him. It wasn't hard enough to actually hurt, but the solid thunk as it hit him square in the forehead was undeniably satisfying. "Dude!" Ethan yelped, stumbling back, rubbing his head. "What the hell?" I pointed toward the street. "Get off my property, Ethan, before I decide to throw something heavier." Muttering under his breath, he took a few steps backward, hands raised in mock surrender. All right, I'm going. But for what it's worth, man, Madison's not worth all this anger. Let it go." I watched as he walked away, shoulders slumped like a kid who had just lost a fight on the playground. That night, I called Tyler. Cracking open a beer, I leaned back on the couch. "You'll never guess who showed up at my house today." "Oh, let me think," Tyler said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Ethan? Bingo. What did he want?" "To clear the air," I said, letting out a dry, bitter laugh. "Apparently, Madison manipulated him too, and now he wants to play the poor, misunderstood victim." Tyler snorted. "Classic Ethan. Let me guess, he gave you some half-hearted apology and pretended he had no idea what he was doing." "Pretty much," I confirmed. "I told him to get lost. And I might have thrown a basketball at him." Tyler burst into laughter. "Man, I wish I had seen that. Did it actually hit him?" "Right in the face," I said, grinning. "Perfect," Tyler said, still chuckling. "That's the energy you need to keep, man. Don't let these clowns get to you. You're better than all of them." For the first time in weeks, I believed he was right. Later that night, as I sat alone with my beer, I replayed the conversation with Ethan in my mind. He had tried to squirm out of responsibility just like Madison always did, but for once I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt free. Ethan and Madison were perfect for each other, two selfish, reckless people who cared more about their own fleeting thrills than the damage they left behind. And me? I was finally done being a part of their mess. A few days later, the divorce proceedings were in full swing. Olivia, my lawyer, was nothing short of a miracle worker. She dissected Madison's demands with a cold, methodical efficiency that made me wish I had met her under better circumstances. Madison, on the other hand, was giving the performance of a lifetime, tears, excuses, and dramatic pauses that could rival a soap opera actress. The first mediation meeting was the real spectacle. It was me, Olivia, Madison, and her lawyer, some overpolished guy named Nathan, who carried himself like he was the smartest one in the room. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. We had barely been in the meeting for 5 minutes before Madison launched into her well-rehearsed speech. I just feel like I've sacrificed so much for this marriage, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she had seemingly conjured from thin air. I gave up my career to support Jordan, and now he's trying to punish me for one mistake. Olivia raised an eyebrow, her pen poised over her notepad. You sacrificed your career? She repeated, her tone neutral yet cutting. Could you clarify what you mean by that, Mrs. Brooks? Madison sniffled for effect. I mean, I could have had a real career if I hadn't spent so much time taking care of Jordan and making our home a happy place. I couldn't hold it in, I laughed out loud. Madison shot me a glare so sharp it could have melted steel. Sorry, I said, raising a hand in surrender. I just need a moment to process this. You sacrificed your career? Madison, you've never held a full-time job for more than 6 months. And let's not forget that in our so-called happy home, I was the one cooking, cleaning, and paying every bill while you were out with Samantha or, well, Ethan. Nathan cleared his throat, clearly attempting to steer the conversation back on track. Mr. Brooks, let's keep extramarital matters out of this discussion. We're here to ensure a fair division of assets. Fine, I said, leaning back in my chair. Let's talk about assets then. Madison, what exactly are you asking for? She straightened, her fake tears disappearing in an instant as if they had never been there. I want half of everything, she declared, her voice firm. The house, the savings, and spousal support for at least 5 years. Olivia remained unfazed. Mrs. Brooks, she said coolly, are you aware that my client has extensive documentation of your financial activity during the marriage? This includes the thousands of dollars spent on luxury goods, vacations, and let's call them extracurricular activities. Madison's complexion turned a shade paler, but before she could respond, Nathan jumped in. That's irrelevant. The court isn't here to judge morality. Perhaps not, Olivia replied smoothly, but it is here to ensure financial fairness. And given Mrs. Brooks's spending habits and her lack of financial contributions to the household, we believe her request for half of the marital assets is unreasonable. A silence settled over the room. Realizing she was losing ground, Madison shifted tactics, leaning forward and letting the tears flow once more. I just don't understand why Jordan is being so cruel, she said, her voice trembling. We built a life together, and now he wants to erase me from it. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay silent. But Olivia had no such reservations. Mrs. Brooks, she said, her tone glacial, this is not about erasing anyone. This is about ensuring that the person who provided financial stability in this marriage, my client, retains what is rightfully his. And your behavior throughout the marriage, as documented, speaks for itself. Madison's jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw something close to genuine panic flicker in her eyes. The second meeting was even worse, for her, at least. Olivia came prepared, bringing actual receipts. Photos of Madison with Ethan. Screenshots of their messages. Bank statements detailing how much she had siphoned from our joint account for her personal indulgences. Madison's lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. She, on the other hand, tried another pivot, launching into her next performance. This is so unfair, she wailed. Jordan knew I was unhappy, but he didn't care. He pushed me to this. Olivia raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Let me get this straight, you're suggesting that your unhappiness justifies fraud, infidelity, and financial manipulation? Is that what you're saying? Madison sputtered, but Nathan swiftly intervened. We'd like to propose a settlement, he said, almost too quickly. Smart move, Olivia said, her smile razor-sharp. By the time negotiations ended, Madison walked away with far less than she had hoped for. No house. No spousal support. Barely enough from the savings to cover her legal fees. As we left the mediation room, she caught up to me in the hallway, her voice low and laced with venom. You think you've won, don't you? She hissed. But you'll never be happy, Jordan. You'll spend the rest of your life alone, stuck in your dull little world, while I move on and live my best life. I turned to her, completely calm. Maybe I will be alone, I said. But at least I'll be honest with myself. Can you say the same? Her face contorted with fury, but before she could respond, I walked away. The divorce was finalized a week later. I kept the house, held onto my savings, and, most importantly, reclaimed my life. Madison had pulled every trick in the book: tears, manipulation, even a last-ditch effort to negotiate outside the lawyers. But Olivia's meticulous work had left her with nothing to bargain with. It was over. I thought I'd feel victorious. But honestly, I just felt relieved. The first thing I did was erase every trace of Madison from my life. Photos, contacts, even the social media accounts I rarely used. It wasn't just about removing her presence, it was about making space for myself again. Then I tackled the house. Room by room, I cleared out every last reminder of her. The garish throw pillows, the overpriced candles she never lit, even the ridiculous fridge magnets she insisted we buy on vacations. By the time I was done, the house no longer felt like ours. It felt like mine. That weekend, Tyler came to town for a visit. He arrived with a 6-pack of beer and a toolkit, announcing that it was time for a home improvement intervention. "Man, this place looks like a dentist's waiting room," he said, surveying the living room. No offense, but Madison's taste was awful. I laughed. None taken. "What do you suggest?" "Let's make this place scream you," Tyler said. No more pastel-colored throw blankets or artificial greenery. This was a full transformation into a true bachelor's space, sleek, minimal, and undeniably masculine. A leather couch, a massive television, and maybe even a dartboard if we were feeling adventurous. The entire day was spent stripping away the remnants of the old decor, shifting furniture, and engaging in a heated debate over whether or not I needed a recliner. In the end, I went ahead and bought one anyway. By the time we finished, the living room felt like a completely different space. It was warm and inviting, but not overly cluttered. It carried a fresh energy, like a blank canvas waiting for new memories. That evening, Tyler and I sat on the couch, each with a beer in hand, watching a basketball game. At one point, Tyler turned to me. "So," he started, "what's the plan now?" "The plan?" I echoed, uncertain. "Yeah," he clarified. "You know, life after Madison. What's next for you?" I thought about it, but no clear answer came to mind. "Honestly? I have no idea," I admitted. "For now, I just want to enjoy the silence, no stress, no mind games. Just peace." Tyler nodded in approval and clinked his beer against mine. "Good call. But when you're ready, you know what you should do." "What's that?" "Take a trip," he suggested. "Get out of town. Clear your head. Go somewhere completely new and just exist." The idea settled in my mind, lingering even after the game ended. A trip. Maybe that was exactly what I needed. Over the next week, I found myself browsing travel blogs during lunch breaks, aimlessly scrolling through destinations. I didn't have a particular place in mind, only a strong urge to be somewhere far removed from Madison and everything that reminded me of the past. Eventually, I came across a small coastal town. It wasn't an extravagant vacation spot, nor was it packed with tourists. But it looked peaceful, and at that moment, peace was all I wanted. The trip turned out to be everything I had hoped for. Long walks along the shore, quiet mornings spent with a cup of coffee and a book, and most importantly, no conversations about my past, no unwanted questions about the divorce. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could simply exist without the weight of expectations. One evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, I sat on an old wooden bench overlooking the ocean. The salty breeze brushed through my hair while the waves crashed against the rocky shore in a steady, calming rhythm. And for the first time, my thoughts weren't consumed by Madison. I wasn't dissecting old fights or dwelling on what I could have done differently. There was no resentment, no sorrow, just a quiet sense of being present. I was here, in this moment, fully alive and whole. When I returned home, something within me had changed. The house no longer felt like a battlefield filled with memories of what had been lost. Instead, it felt like a sanctuary, my space, my fresh start. I threw myself into work, committed to regular gym sessions, and even struck up new friendships there. Slowly but surely, I was piecing myself back together. And the best part? I didn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. I was simply living, and that was more than enough. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Wishing you a great day and all the best.